Man, it's pretty extraordinary. I want to give you permission to do something I don't often give you permission to do as we talk about quitting some things. I want to give you permission to think about everybody else for a few minutes, right? All the people that really need to hear this, and then we'll dial it back in a minute or so. We're on our fourth Sunday of how to be a better quitter. The reason why we find quitting things to be difficult is because when we really think about it, in order for me to quit something, it requires me to admit something about myself, right? If you think about a physical sort of competition, the Oklahoma City Marathon is, I think, going on right now, and so there's going to be a significant amount of people that are going to enter that thing. They're going to be super excited. They will have been, Emily, I don't know if I thought up this saying, but I want credit for it even if I didn't. Is that sometimes my wife would indicate, I know as hard as it is to believe, she would have a grievance that she wanted to redress with me. And I will often laugh and say, if you give me a minute, I'll figure out how this is your fault, right? That I'm good at it. That I can figure out a way to blame people for something, and you can too. And you know it, you dirty people, right? You know you can. You know you're good at it. And you think about it. You got married to the love of your life. You were so excited. 7 years in, you found that you lost yourself, and now you blame your spouse. You resent them. Don't look at them now, but you do. You resent it. You prayed for those children, and God gave them to you. You resent them, you know. You asked God to give you that job, and you resented it. You wanted to go to college. Nobody made you, right? But you resent it. So we blame other people. And you think about it. We're all masters at blaming. Masters at it. That started in the Garden of Eden as well. Eve blamed the serpent. Adam blamed Eve. Then you have Cain and Abel, one's blaming the other. Then you go to Sarah blames Hagar for her problems. You got Joseph's brothers blame him for their problems. You have because people have always been people. Masters at blaming other people. Why do you think we do that? Have you ever thought about that? I'm guessing you haven't, because I hadn't really put a lot of thought into it until the 6 or 7 minutes I used to prepare this message. And when you think about it, I've actually thought about it a little longer than that, but have you thought about why do we blame other people? And you're like, well, because they're wrong. Oh, I get that. Well, because they did something to me. No, think deeper than that. Like in a judicial system, right, we blame others because we want to find out who was culpable, who is it that did the wrong thing. No, just think deeper. Why do we blame other people? And I think it's this. And this is where we're going to have to maybe admit something about ourselves. We blame others because we are hardwired to cling to a couple of things. Moral superiority and disowning responsibility. So as you explore now, if you would just go with me for a few minutes on right, just be willing to look inside your own self and think about your problems and who you're blaming for them. Right, you've got your professor, your parents messed you up, your spouse is difficult, your kids are difficult, your parents are difficult, your boss is difficult, your co-workers for sure are difficult, and so we're blaming them for things. And so think about this though, how hardwired we are to cling to a moral superiority, right? Meaning I am justified in the placing of this blame. I have the more defensible position. Right? I am right to blame them because they are wrong. Now, that's easy when you think about in the cause of a really cut and dried car accident of like, well, you ran the stop sign, you blamed me, right? So you see, you have the morally superior position. You ran the stop sign, you are to be blamed because you hit me, right? But we think about all these other sort of relational things that are really holding us back when we're placing blame. And we cling to it because we're morally superior and more wired to disown responsibility. To me, that is why I'm behaving the way I am now. See what I'm not, no one says I'm not responsible for my behavior. I can run around with axe handles and hit people, right? But you're saying still in a functional, relational way, you're excusing all responses someone did that caused that response. That's why I'm blaming other people. That's why they're quickly able to do it. Did you ever sit down and go, Johnny, the lesson is how to blame. You know, lie curriculum on teaching people how to blame. Aren't they hardwired to do it? It's not my fault. My actions were justified because somebody else did something to me. So easy to see in kids, isn't it? So difficult to see in our own lives. So that's the thing of like, why do we do it? Well, because we don't want responsibility for our own actions. We all want to be a responsible person because the world sort of enjoys that. We don't want, though, responsibility for our own actions. Have you ever blame other people? You're like, what? Because they're idiots and they're wrong. No, think about what happens when you blame other people. So when you are in a scenario to where, let's say, you know, your parents, they were good, even if they weren't Christian. If you got a jury of people together, of other reasonable people, they would say, yeah, you had a reasonable childhood, right? And your parents messed you up. You like function in of what your parents did to you. And so you just find yourself kind of growing in your bitterness toward your parents, or something that you lacked there in the midst of that. And so in the growing of that bitterness toward your parents, you continue to blame them for sort of your current frustration. I'm just asking, do you see what's happening there? In your brain an illusion of helplessness, right? You're creating in your brain an illusion of helplessness. You're becoming a victim, right? Right? A victim is something done to them can't really do anything about. Again, illustration of like well-meaning parents, that sort of thing, right? Go because they did, and because I was related to in this way, then, right? So I'm a victim. I'm powerless here. What can I do? See how that can translate over into because my boss is like this, because my work environment is like this, I'm a victim. There's nothing I can do. It's trapped, and so I guess I'm just like this. Because my spouse operates like this because they're blamed for all these things, then I'm this. See how it works? Is you built within, right then, to blame other people. You became a victim. And that's powerless. And victims are controlled by other people. That's crazy. And now when you think about it, I've said this so many times in our own family, when I need to stop being a victim, and or accuse them like, you're a professional victim, or any other great parenting things that I would do from time to time. But I would tell them, like, stop being a victim. Stop being a victim. Stop being a victim. They'll get older and they'll turn that on you. When you blame other people sometimes, and then you'll be like, shut your mouth, I'm the dad. But is it clicking here? Wait a minute. But as long as I'm blaming everybody, I actually declare myself to be powerless. And so actually, I'm letting everyone else control my life in every different scenario. That's wild, right? Is you look at it and go, okay, well, your parents did. All of us, when we're raising counselors, something to talk about, right? So you're harboring that bitterness toward your parents. You're frustrated because they behaved in some way. And like, well, as long as you're in that blame cycle, they still have all the control over your life. They're still controlling the scenario. Do you realize this? Let's say something happened to you that really was a big deal, and you truly were a victim in every way. In every way. And I'm not mocking and minimizing now, man. Something awful happened. And you're 21 years the other side of that awful thing that happened. And you blame, and you realize that's still affecting you today, right? And it affects how you relate in public, or how you relate to other people, or whether or not you'll even go in public, or how, right? It's affecting you. All of that stuff, and you're blaming them. Guess what? That person still has the power. Because when you stopped at blaming, I said stopped at blaming. When you stopped at blaming, you declared yourself to be in permanent victim mode. Right? You did. You just declared yourself to be powerless over that. That I don't have any control over this. It's just the way it is. And so I'm just left to sort of pick up the pieces, or to allow my bitterness to grow, or it absolves me of whatever actions I take. Man, if you wanted to quit it though, like how would you even do it? Like blaming is so much a part of our life. How would we even quit it? Because you're thinking about maybe just one thing. Like, no, how would we, big picture, quit the blame game? And I want you to turn to Ezekiel chapter 18. And the way you find Ezekiel 18 is to look in the table of contents, and you will never be mocked for that at Countryside. So you look in the table of contents, and you find Ezekiel 18. And as you're turning there, we've considered that we're all pretty well masters at blaming. The reason why we blame others is because we really want to be morally superior, and we really want to disown responsibility. And hopefully what we've seen a little bit of is that when I blame others, what it's costing me is really freedom. Right, because it puts me in a place where I continue to be a victim. And now we want to talk about 4 things in how do I quit this lifestyle of blaming. In Ezekiel 18, it says, the word of the Lord came to me. So it means Ezekiel is saying that God spoke to him. Ezekiel's the prophet, and the word of the Lord came to me. And so then this would be God speaking. What do you people mean by quoting this proverb about the land of Israel? So God is asking Ezekiel to explain to me this proverb. Like, what are you talking about? Now, the use of the word proverb, the actual statement that's being made is not a biblical statement, right? But it's in the Bible. It's just it's like we say the early bird gets the worm or something like that. And so God functionally asking Ezekiel, like, what do you think the people mean by that? And then God's going to clarify their thinking. So he says, what do you people mean by quoting this proverb about the land of Israel? And the proverb is this: the fathers eat sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. The fathers eat sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. So God is asking Ezekiel, explain that to me. Why do the people walk around? Why is that part of their vernacular? Why do they say that thing? And let me explain that proverb to you, and I think you might understand. So if you look at the proverb, it says the fathers eat sour grapes. So it's talking about all of these fathers are ingesting something into their body. You make faces that you didn't know you had before, probably good facial musculoskeletal exercises that take place, right? But you have a response because you ingested those grapes. It says the fathers eat sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. So the proverb going around is the fathers eat the sour grapes, but it's the kids whose faces change. Right? It's like the fathers get a free pass, but the kids are as though they ate the grapes. You follow me? Now, you and I know that if you just go and eat the sour candy and your friend or your kid doesn't eat any of the candy, it doesn't do anything to them. But this is kind of an overarching thing that if we're ever going to get to the core of stopping a blame game, we're going to have to understand. And the core of this game is that we believe God is to be blamed for lots of our problems. In fact, Proverbs 19:3 says, a man's folly ruins his life, but his heart rages against the Lord. And so it's given us the statement, it's a man's foolishness, right? It's that person's own decisions that are ruining their life. It says, but his heart rages against the Lord. Why? Because he wants to be morally superior and he wants to disown himself from any responsibility. So who better to blame than God himself? Quote Ezekiel. People are so good at it that when they're suffering, they're saying, well, that's just how God wired the universe. My dad ate sour grapes, but I'm the one that's suffering from it because God just works that way. He just visits it upon all of the descendants. It seems like they made these bad decisions, and so I'm destined to be in this bad situation. Now look at God in Ezekiel 18:3, where he challenges that thinking by saying, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, you will no longer quote this proverb in Israel. For every living soul belongs to me, the Father as well as the Son. Both alike belong to me. The soul who sins is the soul who will die. He takes the rest of the chapter explaining to them that God deals with people individually. Individually. So what that would help us realize when we're saying, how do I quit blaming others, is we would realize that, yes, I must remember that I am affected by my past, but I am not a prisoner to it. Because that one's worth writing down. I am affected by my past. It's impossible not to be. But I am not a prisoner to it. You see, they had adopted this statement that the father eats sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge, meaning whatever the father's done, that is my destiny. I cannot help but be controlled by it. And he says, no. God deals with each person individually. And so what that means is you can look back at how you were raised, and in today's culture, right? This is a little bit funny, but sometimes prizes are given to people based upon how much, quote, trauma you can find in your life. Probably going to get an email for that. There is real trauma. I didn't say there wasn't, but you look back and you really dig into your family and you figure out where they mess you up. And then you use that as an excuse for all of your sort of future behaviors because after all, you were messed up here. That is being a victim. It is 100% being a victim, and it's being held prisoner to your past instead of just recognizing I was affected by my past. So the number one way to quit this blaming is I am responsible for me, period. I am responsible for me. Think of this. What does it take to be physically healthy? You don't even have to be a nutritionist and you'd figure this out. You'd go, well, I need to have a certain amount of quality food, I need a certain amount of quality exercise, and I need a certain amount of quality sleep. Certain amount of quality food and water, certain amount of quality exercise, certain amount of sleep. And then there you go, right? That's what you have. Have any of you ever even considered, has it ever even crossed your mind? And what I will do is I'll hire somebody to do that for me. No, you laugh at it, right? And you go, well, I do have a trainer at the gym. No, that's someone to help you do it for you. Have you ever considered, no, I really want to get into shape. I'm going to hire this guy, and he's going to eat for me. No, because you know you cannot outsource your physical health, right? You can't do it. Every time you play the blame game, you are outsourcing your spiritual and emotional well-being to somebody else. You're outsourcing it. They're responsible for my thing. I blame them. That's why I have my problems. They're responsible. It is true. They may be to blame, and that might affect you, but guess what? You are not a prisoner to it. That means you have to remind yourself that I have choices. I have choices. Because I have to remember that I am not a victim. Choices that you have to make. So we've said I'm responsible. I have choices. I'm not helpless. I'm not a victim. I might have been victimized, but I'm not going to stay one. I'm not going to stay one because that just keeps all the control right there with them. And the third thing is I got to ask myself, what possible blame do I share in this? What possible blame do I share in this? Now, don't think about the horrific thing that's been done. There are scenarios where there's zero blame, but think about your other people. Goodness gracious, you know that you got to take some inventory and see what blame you share in this. In Matthew chapter 7, we see that of why are you going to your brother, tell him he's got a speck in his eye and you have a log in your own eye. Like, first deal with yourself. Like, I'm mad that my husband never does the dishes. He never notices the dishes. That frustrates me. It's frustrated me for years. And so that's why I deal pretty shady with him, you know, and I run my mouth at him quite a bit. And sometimes I even swing the iron on with the cord when I get real mad. I don't know how your house works. This is how it is in my house. No, it's not that way. That you absolve yourself of some of your own actions because after all, he's not doing those things. What blame do you share in that? Are you willing to ask that? And then you might be able to see, well, maybe I've never asked him. Maybe I've never really talked about it. And man, and this one, and we're landing the plane here, but this one's hard for every age because nobody wants to admit that they share some blame in it. Man, it's hard for every age. And I'm not mocking, but it's really hard when you're like 13, 14, 15. And so I'm not getting on to you, but I would invite you of like, man, would you be willing to slow down just a second and just think, is it possible that you might bear some guilt in this scenario? Is it just possible at all? And if you're willing to just examine your life of going, is it possible at all that if I were to say, there's really no scenario being criminal situation, you bear some blame, that your life will be healthier if you're willing to might share in it? The fourth one's this, to find what price am I willing to pay to make these choices. Meaning, for you to stop blaming, pay a price. The price is I got to admit that I've probably been living as a in some areas of my life. Am I willing to pay the price to admit? Am I willing to speak? And not just blame, but to speak up to myself and to others. So it's no secret that I flunked a lot of classes in college. And I was a professional blamer for lots of my life. And it wasn't until I was able to own up to, I really don't have anybody to blame, truly to blame, but me. And when I'm willing to pay the price for that, I will find that life will get better. Folks, life is too short to live as a victim. And life is also a real long time to live as a victim. Take this to heart. Don't go the way of the culture that blames everybody for everything that happened in their life. I am responsible for me. I will not outsource my physical health. I will not outsource my spiritual health. I will take ownership of me. I will take that before the Lord, and I will accept responsibility for me. And then I'll always be affected by my past, but I'll no longer be a prisoner to my past. Heavenly Father, thank you for the chance to be here today. Help us now to sing with joy, with hope, with excitement at what you have done in our lives. Thank you again, Father, for bringing Doyle to us and alongside us. And I ask that you would just work this into our lives in a way that I can't, but the Spirit can. Amen.